Listen to me, hold on now. I tell you something right up front before you scroll past this video. What's happening between the United States and India right now? It ain't some quiet team meeting disagreement. It's like your crazy uncle at Thanksgiving flipping the table and then blaming the turkey. Look at me. We got two of the biggest global power players trading barbs like they're at a family reunion, and someone just forgot to bring the sweet potato pie. You've been hearing a little buzz, 50% tariffs, H-1B fees up to $100,000, but you haven't heard it like this in a way that makes sense, makes you go, oh. I'm Steve Harvey, here to break it down real talk style, because this ain't just economic geek stuff for Wall Street. This affects your job prospects, your favorite prices at the store, your paycheck, and yeah, your world. So let me start by asking you straight up, can you believe the United States slapped a 50% tariff on goods coming from India? 50%, that's not a late fee, that's not a small bump, that's a huge hike, one that puts India's stuff into a bracket most countries don't even see. That's like walking into a store and being told, everything you love now costs half again as much. And why? Because of disagreements over trade rules and India's continued oil purchases from Russia and Washington saying, hey, you gotta quit that. And India saying, hey, that's how we keep our lights on and our people working. This ain't theory, this is real policy hitting real people. Wikipedia +1 now mental stage direction. Steve Harvey adjusts his suit jacket, looks right at you with that famous silent stare, and asks, what do you think someone's gonna do when you tax their goods so high that it's like hiking their price tag just to be in your market? Let me tell you how India sees it, and this is the core tension. India's exporting products worth tens of billions to the U.S., stuff like apparel, jewelry, machinery, IT services, and now half of that value is getting eaten up by tariffs. That hurts exporters, that hurts jobs, that hurts families. And India's not just taking it quietly, they've publicly called these measures unfair and unreasonable. That's like telling your neighbor, you got to mow my lawn and pay me for the privilege. And your neighbor responding, man, that ain't right. Wikipedia now mix in this other twist. The H-1B visa fee hike. The U.S. government decided that any future H-1B visa application has to include a $100,000 fee on top of everything. $100,000. That's not a deposit, that's a down payment on a house. That's the kind of fee that makes even big tech firms go hold up, what are we paying for? And for young Indian tech professionals dreaming of working in America, that's like having your dream pulled out from under you, and that alters talent, flows, ambitions, and lives. Wikipedia +1 look, I tell you something, when you raise visa costs that high, you're not just regulating immigration, you're reshaping human capital. That ripple goes far deeper than trade barriers. It reaches into classrooms, coding boot camps, family dinner tables. And while Washington's flipping tariffs and stirring up immigration policy like a pot of gumbo, across the globe, look at me, real talk. India isn't just standing there with its arms crossed. They're pivoting. They are strategizing. You see heads of state from India talking with China and Russia, exploring deeper cooperation. People call it strategic hedging, or even an emerging triangle dynamic. This isn't just economics anymore, this is geopolitics in motion. The Times of India mental stage direction. Steve gives that long silent stare one more time, like when someone claims the Easter Bunny brought the ham to dinner. And as if that wasn't enough to make your head spin, we've even seen diplomatic fireworks with Pakistan and ceasefire talk that Trump said he brokered a claim some diplomats in Delhi quietly disagree with. That kind of narrative friction doesn't just make headlines, it reshapes trust between governments. Wikipedia now, if you're sitting there thinking, Steve, how does any of this matter to me? Listen to me good. These tariffs affect prices on goods you buy, jobs in tech and manufacturing, investment decisions from the biggest companies in the world, and where global supply chains decide to plant their factories tomorrow. This is not some dusty chapter in a textbook. This is happening this minute. So don't click away, stay tuned for part 2, where we break down why this all happened, what the real interests are behind the headlines, and how the stuff you care about is wrapped up in these big power plays. Because if you want to understand today's world, you've got to see how these giant chess pieces are moving, and I'm here to explain it like only Steve Harvey can. Hold on now, hold on. If part 1 was the appetizer, this right here. This is the main course. Sit up straight, put your phone down for half a second, and look at me, because now we're gonna talk about why all this mess is happening. I tell you something people don't like to admit. Countries act just like families. Everybody say they're cool, until money, respect, and control come into the room. Then all of a sudden, folks start remembering old arguments. Now let's break this down real simple. The United States says, India, we want fair trade. India says, we've been trading fair, you just don't like who we buy our groceries from. That's the root of it. Here's the fact part, no cap, no drama. India is one of the largest buyers of Russian energy in the world right now. Oil, gas, coal, because India's got one. 4 billion people, factories running day and night, and a government that knows one thing. You cannot let the lights go out, period. Russia offered energy at discounted prices after Western sanctions, and India said, we'll take that deal. That's not ideology, that's economics. Now Washington didn't like that one bit. So what happens next in geopolitics? Same thing that happens at a church potluck when somebody don't like how you seasoned the chicken pressure. Sanctions, threats, tariffs, visa restrictions, the message is clear. Change your behavior or pay the price. Mental stage direction. Steve Harvey slowly takes off his glasses, pauses, gives that you gotta be kidding me stare. Because here's the problem, India doesn't respond well to being pushed around. India remembers colonial history. India remembers economic dependency. India remembers being told, you can't do this, you can't trade there, you can't build that. So when tariffs hit 50%, India doesn't just see trade policy, they see control. Now let's talk numbers, because this ain't emotional, it's mathematical. A 50% tariff means Indian exporters suddenly lose competitiveness overnight. That affects textiles, pharmaceuticals, auto parts, gems, IT services industries employing millions. And when exports get squeezed, governments don't panic, they pivot. This is where the so-called Chinese checkers move comes in. India starts deepening energy coordination with Russia. India keeps diplomatic channels open with China, even with border tensions still simmering. India pushes BRICS, local currency trade, and non-dollar settlement systems. That ain't betrayal, that's hedging. Look at me. In chess, you defend the king. In checkers, you protect your side of the board. In Chinese checkers, you move multiple pieces at once so nobody traps you. India is making sure no single country can choke its economy. Now let's hit the H-1B visa fee situation, because this one's personal for a lot of folks. $1 one, 100 zeros, 0 fee isn't about paperwork, it's about deterrence. It says only the biggest companies and the richest applicants need apply. That hits Indian tech workers the hardest because Indian professionals dominate STEM pipelines, especially in Silicon Valley, healthcare tech, AI, and enterprise software. Here's the irony, look at me closely. American companies depend on this talent. Startups, hospitals, universities, even government contractors. So when you make talent harder to access, two things happen. Costs go up, talent goes elsewhere, and where do you think that talent goes? Canada, Europe, Middle East, or stays home strengthening India's own tech ecosystem. Now add the GM crop dispute into the mix. The U.S. wants wider access for genetically modified agricultural exports. India says, no, our farmers, food security, and biodiversity come first. Again, not emotion policy. Food is political in India in a way Americans don't always understand. And finally, that awkward diplomatic moment, the India-Pakistan ceasefire narrative. When Trump publicly claimed credit for brokering calm, India quietly pushed back. Why? Because India guards its image of strategic autonomy. They don't like the idea that outside powers manage South Asian security. Mental stage direction. Steve Harvey folds his hands, nods slowly. So when you stack it all together, tariffs, visas, energy, agriculture, diplomacy, this ain't chaos. This is a power recalibration. The U.S. is asserting leverage. India is asserting independence. And the world is watching who blinks first. And listen, this ain't anti-America, and it ain't anti-India. This is just how big powers behave when the global order is shifting. Now don't move, because in part 3, we're gonna talk about what happens next, who this really affects, and why regular people, not politicians, need to understand this moment. Come on, come on, come on. Sit with me for a second. This is where it all comes together. Look at me. This ain't just about governments arguing across microphones. This is about where the world is headed, and whether everyday folks are ready for what's coming next. Because I tell you something, Steve Harvey style, straight from the chest. Power doesn't disappear, it shifts. Now what's next in this U.S. India standoff? First thing, nobody backs down fast. Big nations don't apologize like kids on a playground. They posture, they test, they wait to see who flinches. Those 50% tariffs, they might get negotiated down, sliced into exemptions, or redirected through third countries, but the message is already sent. Companies are recalculating supply chains. CEO are asking, do we really want all our eggs in one basket? And when businesses move, jobs move with them. For Americans, that means higher prices on certain goods, slower tech hiring, and companies investing more overseas instead of at home. For Indians, that means accelerated self-reliance, more domestic manufacturing, more homegrown startups, more partnerships outside the West. Mental stage direction. Steve Harvey leans forward, elbows on the desk. And let me say this clearly, India is not weak. A nation that feeds 4 billion people, runs nuclear reactors, launches satellites, dominates software, and sits at the center of the Indo-Pacific. That nation cannot be crushed. It can be pressured, but pressure creates diamonds, not surrender. Now, about China and Russia, people get nervous when they hear that. But listen, India isn't switching sides. India is playing its own side. Strategic autonomy means no one country gets a remote control to your economy. This is why you see India buying oil from Russia, trading in local currencies, and still negotiating with the U.S. at the same time. That's not confusion, that's leverage. And what about young people? Students, workers, families, here's the Steve Harvey motivation moment. If you're American, understand this. The world is more competitive now. Talent doesn't beg anymore. Countries are courting brains, builders, and innovators. Policies that block instead of attract, they cost more than they save. If you're Indian, understand this. This is your moment. When doors narrow, nations that build internally grow stronger. Education, technology, manufacturing, diplomacy, this is where generational power gets shaped. Mental stage direction. Steve Harvey stands up, straightens his suit jacket. I've said this my whole career, you don't lose when people doubt you. You lose when you doubt yourself. India isn't reacting out of anger. The U.S. isn't acting out of hate. They're both responding to a world where dominance is no longer automatic. And to you watching this, don't just consume the headlines. Understand them. Because the next decade won't be decided by tweets or speeches, it'll be decided by who adapts fastest. So here's your takeaway. The world is multipolar now. Trade is strategic. Talent is currency. And respect. Respect has to be mutual. If you learned something today, don't just nod, stay informed, stay curious, and stay ready. Because history ain't slowing down, and neither is Bharat.